Hi, I'm Steffanie Rivers, and I want justice. The police officers involved showed reckless disregard. Hello, welcome to the video version of my journal. I'm Steffanie. Come on into the conversation. Watching my video journal, and I am multicasting on several platforms. And if you want to join the conversation, I just put the link in the chat, and that will lead you to join me live. I'm multicasting on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and a couple of other platforms. So if you are new to the conversation, we want to, I know you're going to hear something that you're going to want to like, and I'm going to ask you to share it and subscribe so that when I post videos, you'll be the first to know. And if you are returning conversation, thanks for joining. So today we're talking about Marc Wilson. Marc Wilson is going to prison because prosecutors in Bullock County, Georgia, saw their chance of getting a conviction going down the drain. So instead of letting a black man, in this case, Marc Wilson, instead of letting Marc Wilson get a fair trial, jury of his peers concluding that he was not guilty of murder or aggravated assault based on the evidence and the testimony during his trial that happened late last month. They wanted the prosecutors changed the rules in the middle of the prosecution. They changed the charges that Marc Wilson was charged with. And where do they do that? In the middle of the prosecution, in the middle of the trial, they change up the charges. Well, apparently they do that in Georgia. Now, if you don't know the story about Marc Wilson, it happened in 2020, and here's a picture of Marc Wilson. It happened in 2020. Marc Wilson is a black man. He was dating a white girl, and they were driving along the street on their way to get something to eat. And there was a group of teenagers in a truck that were, according to Marc's testimony and his girlfriend's testimony, they were yelling racial epithets at them, and they also were trying to run them off the road. And so that's when Marc Wilson took out his legally his legal handgun, his legal weapon that he had, and shot into the truck that was trying to run them off the road 3 times. And one of those bullets struck a woman who was in the vehicle that was trying to run them off the road, and she died. So law enforcement showed up to the scene and arrested Wilson, and that was in 2020. Now, it took about a year and a half for Marc Wilson to even get a bond hearing. Now, you know, normally when you get something was happens to you and it's a felony and you have to have a hearing, a bond hearing, they let you get that hearing right away. But essentially, this judge, his name is Judge Michael Muldrew, he would not even set a bond hearing for Wilson's case. So for a year and a half, Marc Wilson just sat in jail waiting for for the judge, for the prosecution, for somebody to do something. And until Judge Michael Muldrew was removed from the case, and then Marc Wilson got a bond hearing and a bond was set, he was able to get out. And that was a year and a half half later. And that was even though, one, he had no criminal history at all, and even though, two, people like the McMichaels and their sidekick, William Roddy Bryan, who murdered Ahmaud Arbery on camera, and it went unchallenged, they went uncharged, and they remained free for months until the national outcry in that case led the Glenn County DA's office, which was also, they had to change out who was over the DA's office because it was revealed that favoritism on the behalf of the McMichaels was what was keeping them out of jail and keeping them from being charged with murder. So you got the same state, you got you got Marc Wilson having a witness in this case, and even the people who he shot into the vehicle, they said that they were yelling things at the car. So you got everybody corroborating what Marc Wilson said happened, and I'm sure damage to the vehicle showed that they had contact with his vehicle, that they were trying to run him off the road, that they feared for their lives. So you got this guy using deadly force to defend himself and defend his girlfriend, and he gets in jail with no bond hearing at all. And then you got these U-Hauls, whatever you call them, up the street chasing people in a truck and killing him on video. Brother Ahmaud Arbery on video, and they get to walk for months. So it's just a tale of two justice systems, and we know what that's all about. So these cops and these prosecutors in Georgia, they don't have a problem showing compassion and giving the benefit of the doubt to a white man. But for a black man, he's guilty until proven innocent. But when it's looking like that black man will get to walk, these crooked prosecutors who were over Wilson's case reduced the charges from murder and aggravated assault, because that's what they charged him with initially. They reduced the charges from murder and aggravated assault to felony involuntary manslaughter. Now, why did they do that? Because the evidence and the way the trial was going, they saw we're not going to get a conviction on murder or aggravated assault. So we're going to reduce the charges so that way we can get a conviction. Well, apparently you've wanted him to go to prison for murder, but when it wasn't working out in their favor, now all of a sudden they come forth with some new charges that nobody ever said anything about until the trial, that he was never brought up on until the trial. In fact, the prosecutors in this case, they had an opportunity to plead with Marc Wilson, and they refused to do any type of plea agreement with him over those murder charges. But because they thought, oh yeah, this is a slam dunk, we're gonna put this black man in prison, even though he rightfully and lawfully defended himself and his girlfriend. And when it wasn't turning out like they thought, then here they come with some okie doke mess that apparently that's the way they rock in Georgia. Okay, so on top of that, the judge didn't inform the jury that they had an option to convict on misdemeanor involuntary manslaughter or felony involuntary manslaughter. So Wilson got convicted of the felony version, and the judge then got to sentence him to 10 years. So if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. Now, Wilson attorneys, now all they have to wait for, and all they can do now at this point is to file an appeal to get him retried. I saw a video recently of the white girlfriend the other day talking about how She's been receiving death threats from people in the community for her support of Wilson, and how she didn't realize that there was so much racism in Bullock County. It's outside of Savannah, Georgia, in Statesville, Georgia area. She didn't realize it was just that bad. Now, of course, until the event spewed your way, most white people are not going to acknowledge that there is racism. But because she was put in that, but now all of a sudden she is feeling like, I just didn't know there was racist people out here. Well, you been out there. And so as long as it was not directed at her, I guess she didn't have a reason to think about it, apparently. But now, come to find out, they are no longer together. Marc Wilson, the man who has been convicted to 10 years in prison, this dude was out here with his girl, calling her his queen. That's y'all's right. That's our right to date who we want to date. So I have no qualms about that, because you love, you want to be with whoever you want to be with. But he is getting sentenced to he had life-threatening situations thrown at him because of this relationship. He had to defend his life and her life because of this relationship. Now he's going to prison because of this relationship. And now they're no longer together. So she gets to just walk away, and like it was a bad dream for her. Meanwhile, he about to live a nightmare unless they can get this conviction overturned. He's only 23 years old. And so that's all I'm going to say about that. When you decide to make certain decisions in life, you have to look at, who it is you are getting into that situation with. And in the long run, it'll be worth your freedom and your life, because sometimes that is what's going to be on the line, is your freedom and your life. So that's, I would ask, and I know he has a lot more to worry about than this, but if he had to do it again, I would ask Marc Wilson, would he put himself in the same position? And probably he would not. But here we are. Now, I want to turn to another attorney. I want to turn to New York Attorney General Letitia James. Now, her office is suing Donald Trump and his 3 oldest children for falsifying paperwork to get loans on overvalued property and to get lower property tax assessments on that same property when it worked in Trump's favor. So when it suited Donald Trump, he overvalued property, sometimes as much as 3 times its value. And when it suited Donald Trump, he undervalued that same property. Then he signed off on all the paperwork. Now, why he thought this would never come back to bite him in the ass, I don't know. Maybe it's because he has so many people around him that he felt like he was invincible. And I would say up until this point, he probably felt that way until the 21st of September, yesterday, when these charges were rolled out. And this is a civil case. And I say it is a civil case because the attorney general of the states of whatever, in this case, New York, they don't necessarily prosecute people, they investigate people, and then they come to their findings, and then they pass it to the district attorney, the prosecutors in that jurisdiction, in this case, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. So it's going to be up to the Manhattan DA whether or not they're going to criminally prosecute Donald Trump and his family. And why did that come to pass? Well, he was trying to do too much. For the last 30, 40 years, he's been doing what Letitia James' investigation shows that he was doing. Something new, but you had to have somebody to come up and say and speak out. And that person was Michael Cohen. That was used to be Donald Trump's personal attorney or private attorney or whatever he was. He was his like bully pit bull legal pit bull, essentially. If you haven't read that book, Disloyal, that was the name of Michael Cohen's book. I listened to it on audio tapes because I went, actually, I was driving I didn't drive to the Grand Canyon, but when I got to Flagstaff and then I took a rental car to go up to the Grand Canyon and back, I listened to that. That was one of my things that I did. So anyway, if you haven't, that's a good book that gives you the insider's perspective on what was going on with Donald Trump and the Trump organization and how he used people and why people allowed themselves to be used. That's another viewpoint that Michael Cohen's book really just it lets you see into how people think when you are just so enamored by somebody, the presence, being in that presence, and you know stuff ain't right. He was talking about how his kids, teenagers, knew this dude is not right who you working for, daddy. But because Michael Cohen wanted to be in that circle and all of that, have all that influence, then you put yourself in a position to where he now had went to prison and got released and is barred. He's been barred from practicing law, I'm pretty sure, in New York State. I don't know about the rest of the United States, but essentially it ruined his legal career behind some Donald Trump mess. And remember, he testified in front of Congress. So after all of that and the testifying in front of Congress is when New York Attorney General Letitia James, and I'll go ahead and show you Letitia James in case you don't know who she is. This woman in the green dress is Attorney General Letitia James. So this, I'm gonna put this link in the chat because it was 45 minutes of information that you need to listen to. If you find yourself, I want to put that in the chat, the link to Letitia James's statement about how and why what she's charging Donald Trump and his 3 oldest kids with, and why she's doing it. So if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. So let's see what the Manhattan DA District Attorney's Office will do with all this information that has come out about Donald Trump and how he overvalued property and got loans and on that property that was overvalued. And as a matter of fact, Deutsche Bank is one of the banks that he mostly was working with. They've agreed to come forward with the paper. And the attorneys that the CFO, in fact, that was over the Trump organization, he has with some crimes and has had a plea deal. So when all these people start coming forward and showing paperwork with your on it, and in fact, it came out that when Letitia James' office had a sit down, an interview, I think it's called deposition with Donald Trump. They said for about 4 hours, all he said was, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth. So he doesn't even have any defense except I plead the fifth, which means I choose to remain silent so that I won't self-incriminate. Because if I open my mouth, I'm done. So we already know you. So it's just a matter of time. If you don't want to speak on your behalf, all these other people want to speak on your behalf. So you wonder why he never would reveal his tax returns, because the fuzzy math was going to get him not elected. The fuzzy math was going to get him in jail, and by the time the IRS gets finished with him and working over there, uh, if this dude don't see some prison time and some silver bracelets, okay, then I just don't know what else to say. What else can be done? So it reminds me because even when I went back and looked at the comments, Bishop James' statement that just happened yesterday, there were so many people still who wanted to say, "Oh, it's just that famous witch hunt. Oh, there's nothing to it. If it was, she would prosecute him." So again, the attorney general does prosecute people. The attorney general, they investigate people and they pass on the information to the jurisdiction that can prosecute criminally. So that's why we're waiting to see what's going to happen with the district attorney in Manhattan. And so it reminds me of this um, comedian. The comedian, he was saying, you know what kind of girlfriend I want? He said, I want the kind of girlfriend who's like a Trump supporter. I don't care what you tell her I did. She ain't gonna believe it. She gonna say it's fake news. She'll say they making it up. She gonna say the girl is on they witch hunting. It's I don't care what you tell people. Some people they're going to ride for him. They're gonna die for him. They're gonna fight on his behalf. No matter what you tell him. It takes time for crooked people, for crooked white people, basically, to get exposed. And so, especially if they keep doing it, because if they have other crooked people taking up for them and taking the shots for them, it is going to, they might get away with it forever. But as I said, if you start chipping away at other people around that person, then most definitely you're going to get to the center of the sucker, okay? And that's the person in this case is Donald Trump. So the walls are falling around him. So we'll see what happens that, because if they're in Georgia, as a matter of fact, you got the prosecutor in Fulton County, Georgia, because of that phone call that Donald Trump to the governor, I think it was, and the board of election person, secretary of election, trying to get them to find me 500 more votes. That call. Then you've got, of course, the classified documents found at his Mar-a-Lago home. That case, and then you've got Letitia James and the lawsuit against him, and then if they prosecute him in the Manhattan DA's office, oh, he might commit suicide rather than admit that he is a crook, which we already know it, but it's different when you get somebody to admit that they wrong. You know how you're in a relationship with me, and I don't care what you do, they know they wrong, but they won't say, I apologize, I was wrong. Donald Trump is that type of dude. He is not going to admit that he was wrong, and he's going to go out trying to save face. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, if you don't know about the Marc Wilson case, go investigate himself, because it's something going on in Georgia, and it seems like, of course, we know that there are lots of cases where people are getting away or trying to get away with murder and other crimes, but when it comes to using your lawful rights to defend yourself, then a black man like Marc Wilson is being sent to prison for 10 years. And that is just no justice. So to find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal, and that's at eurweb.com.